So many times when I come in, the enemy tries to boggle my mind with distractions and worldly thoughts. And then whenever Pastor was led to have us do quiet time, everything went silent. I was able to concentrate more on what I needed to be concentrating on. I praise him for it. The title today is Deny Yourself. You know, the first commandment that he gave in the 10 Commandments was have no other gods before me. And so many times we can apply that to whether it be money or a job or something like that. But our innate nature of the flesh tries to cover up the hidden things that we need to make right here. And if we're putting ourselves above him in different things, it doesn't really matter of what genre it is, so to speak. But if we're spending more time doing what John wants to do versus what he's called John to do, then I'm putting myself above him. And I'm also emanating the character of the enemy, who we see from the original lie. He wanted to lift himself up and make himself more important than God in his work, to the point that he was going to violently try to overthrow God, the very nature which he abhors. Jesus said, so many times through the Gospels, that you got to love everyone else more than you love yourself. The very character of Christ was he could be exhausted, he could be hungry, he could be fatigued, he could just need some quiet time. But when someone else needed something, he put everything he wanted to do on check to make sure he was about his Father's business. In Luke 9, starting in verse 23. Jesus makes very clear, there's no room for vagueness, there's no room for, he really meant this. Verse 23 says, and he was saying to them all, if anyone wishes to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whosoever wishes to save his life shall lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake, he is the one who will save it. So many times we apply that to actual martyrdom, actually laying down our lives, saying, no, I won't denounce Christ, chop my head off or whatever, and rightly so. But another part sometimes we may not clearly see is it's the same as if I want to go do this over here, and he's called me to do this over here, am I weighing this higher? Am I arguing the point? Am I questioning whether I should? Our psyche is so well developed, even as children, we're manipulators. You can see 2 toddlers, and they're going to figure out a way to be the one that has the toy. Even to the point some of them are very cunning when mom or dad or whoever comes in to correct them, and they'll come up with some elaborate ruse of, I'm doing it for his betterment or something. I've seen some silly stuff like, that doesn't fly, but it's cute try, nice try. Our nature's the same thing. We're trying to submit to death. Carrying the cross is a one-way sentence. It's a death sentence. That's the only place it is for me. And if I can say, well, John really wants to go make money right now, instead of spending this time talking to this person that's raised the question, then I'm overriding what the Lord would want me to do. Even if I say, you're not really qualified, or they can hear the excuses that'll come into your mind on why you shouldn't engage that is just childish. But so many times we allow that to sway us and make us nervous to where we'll defer to this over here and not actually challenge that over there where we're supposed to be. The word says if we are to give account, we are a fighting force. He said, if this was my kingdom, my people would fight. Well, we're fighting for his kingdom. So if we're going to say, okay, you know what, I'll just slide on over here and do what I was going to do to start with, we're avoiding the very thing we're supposed to be doing. And we're making a logical excuse of why we don't really have to do that. And it's really, after Pastor made that comment about the Lord told him the God right now is the God of entertainment. How many times do we defer to just sitting back, kicking it, doing whatever, entertainment, so to speak, versus being busy about what we need to be doing? even if it's just one-on-one time with the Lord and straightening out what all is wrong here. The mirrors are not fun for me because I see how I critique myself too much. And some of it's right. Some of it's condemnation from the enemy. But it needs to be there. I don't need to be obscure in the mirror so I don't have to really look at problems. And that's the way the enemy tries to corrupt our heart to where, oh, see, you're doing what's right. You're doing what's holy. So many times in Christians' walk, we see the enemy will spin it to where they're actually doing something good. Like even Adam and Eve. Well, you'll be like him. You'll know both the good and evil. You'll be better off, is what he was saying. Because now you have some more knowledge and you can determine yourself what you shouldn't touch or get near or whatever. And it was completely out of context. The only way you're going to do it, Matthew 10, verse 38, rightly, it's so easy. The enemy is a master of deceit. You know, I was recently talking to some of the guys down there at Tucker, and they were talking about creation and different things, and really some of the things, it's not doctrinally. You don't know. You don't know if it's really a young earth. You may speculate. And I made the comment, why do you think the enemy picked the serpent? Out of all the animals at the garden, you know, if I was going to pick somebody in the garden, I'd pick somebody, you know, like a lion or a bear that's got some stature, you know, or, you know, an elephant that hardly anything can mess with, even though there was no death at that time. But he intentionally picked the serpent. And he said because it was more subtle and deceitful than any other beast. Even before the fallen nature, he picked what best aligned themselves with him. You come in under the cover, so to speak, and tag you. Before you know it, you've already been bitten by whatever the heresy or whatever he wants us to believe. He could say, well, you shouldn't spend 24. Nobody expects you to spend 24/7 with the Lord. That's one of those things from the enemy. Just wants you to keep you from spending the 5 minutes I have right now with the Lord. Because, oh, well, you can do it later. Like Michael's pointed out, well, if you wait until later, you probably are not going to have the 5 minutes. You're going to probably be tired. And then you're going to use the excuse, well, he wants my best, not my afterthoughts, so I'll do it in the morning when I'm fresh. And then it continually progresses. Matthew 10, verse 38. I've recently looked at myself a whole lot closer than I was obviously looking at myself. And I'm seeing so many times that it wasn't my intention, but I was deferring to spend more time doing what John was supposed to be doing, or John thought he was supposed to be doing that day, than actually check and say, Lord, what do you want me to do? It's so easy to get off track. He wants us, like in Ephesians, he said, do the things you did at first. You've left your first love. Now you're about busy things. You can even call yourself doing his ministry, and you get so busy, you leave him out of it. You don't even check with him. He's supposed to be the one you're under the mission of. If I'm in the military and the general has certain orders and I don't even check with the general, I'm just going to start doing whatever, there's going to be problems. Because no longer am I serving under his command in respect of him doing his mission. I'm doing whatever and saying, oh, it'll be good for him. He'll do it. He'll be okay. Verse 38 says, well, let's go back to 37. He who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he who does not take his cross and follow me after me is not worthy of me. He who has found his life shall lose it, and he who has lost his life for my sake shall find it. I remember when they asked Jesus and said, I want to be part of your disciples. He said, are you sure? He said, I don't have a place to lay my head. I don't have a steady meal. I never know when my next meal is going to be. Are you sure you want to follow that? It's not a bed of roses. Churchianity out here wants to push the fact your best life now. You should be able to have luxury and peace and not fight, not toil, no struggle, even to the point like they did with Job. And we see they were doing it in Jesus' day. Well, who sins? Whose sins is he paying for? Because obviously if anything bad's befalling him, it can't be God's hand, because God wouldn't do that to somebody. And that's not what Jesus said. It's so that the glory might be revealed. That's why he was born blind. It wasn't because of sin or he's getting punished. If you have a bad day, it could be your own fault. Generally, most of the time, it can be your own fault because you're not spending that time with him to get yourself right. But it doesn't always mean that, oh, well, John has sinned and John's getting bashed by the Lord. The Lord may have very well said, you notice my servant over here? And Satan said, well, let me at him and we'll see how he's going to do. I get so sick of this mamby-pamby, build yourself up on a pedestal type theology. And that's what it is. Oh, you got to have the best and nicest things or people will know, well, you're not really of him. Jesus' word says, if you're truly of me, they're going to hate you. They're going to mock you. They're going to belittle you. You're not going to. He came as someone that wasn't even handsome. People didn't want to admire him. He wasn't seemly. He was a scrubby person that by outward appearance wasn't attractive. And for a reason. Because he was trying to reach those that could see past that really wanted the Spirit of Christ, his bride. He loved us with a passion so fervent. It's like Hosea, even though we've cheated on him. He's paid for our redemption. He bought us back, and he's wooing us back to him. Will we answer that call? And all of us at some point, not saying we're maliciously doing it, all of us at some point have turned away from him. I've turned away from doing what he wanted me to do that day and just didn't even check with him and done my cutting grass or whatever it was at the time. He knows my heart. Once it's revealed, I try better. I try harder. I try to shake off the dust and stand up, and we all need to do that. But all these, it's staggering how people really don't want to know him intimately. They're glad with this. Okay, you stand over there, Father. You stand over there, Jesus. You can be God of a quarter of my life, but the other 3/4 is mine to do with what I want. That's not what he's called us for. Galatians 5. Are we willing to deny ourselves? Brian posted a little snippet from Bethel. He was talking about marriage. And he said the only way a marriage truly works well is when the husband is all about pleasing and honoring and cherishing the wife. Her concerns is his concern, not what am I going to get out of it. And the same with her. That's the only way it works. It's got to be both sides. If I think I'm more special and therefore feed me or whatever it is in the marriage if I was married, then I'm going to dishonor her. I am dishonoring her by doing that. Am I willing to say, whatever John wanted to do is death, and that's the symbol of baptism, and whatever Christ wants me to do, whatever Christ wants me to succeed at, I'll put forth an extra effort to do that. Then I'm honoring him. Then I'm respecting the fact that he sacrificed so much for me. Wrapping up very quickly, Galatians 5:24. Now those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and its desires. It doesn't necessarily mean, it's not just talking about sin. It could be something that's not a sin. But if we're putting it out of proportion with our relationship with God, it's just became a sin. We're making it an idol. We're making it a God in our life. Everybody knows I love to eat. If I'm going to put eating above things I need to be doing, then it's out of proportion. It's then become a sin and a barrier between me and the one who has called me to be his child. Let's see where I'm at. Verse 25. If we live by the Spirit, let us also walk by the Spirit. The nature, if you look at the Beatitudes or even the fruits of the Spirit, they're basically the same thing. They're worded a little bit different. But if we can look at our life every day, each day, and say, what I did here with this instance match up with that? And if it's all, fix it. And don't use no excuse, well, they did this to me, or they did that to me, or this or that, or something else. Oh, it's hot and I didn't eat, and so therefore I can act like a jerk. That doesn't qualify. We're supposed to be warriors for Christ. Eventually, whenever he was talking about judges, he said, you can't judge the simplest matters, but yet you're going to judge angels. We're going to be the administration of God, and we're going to be childish with our actions. Closing in Romans 6. It's born into our DNA to be selfish. Before we even learn right, wrong, sin, whatever, we're already trying to take the toy in the crib from the other one. We're already trying to stack the favor as far as if something happens, who's going to get the whooping. We don't want it. It's their fault, even if we did it. I know, I've been there, done that. I used to be so foolish I'd get us both in trouble by blabbing it out just to get him in trouble because I was mad at him. I was a vindictive little jerk. Not very bright either. But now the Lord's pushing me to where I defer. That wasn't the nature I was supposed to have. Now I defer. If Shane needs something, if I can, I drop what I'm doing and I try to help him. If Michael needs something, he knows he can call. If I can make a way, I'll make a way. That's not the nature I used to have. In the flesh, I probably wouldn't have that nature now, I'm sure, if it wasn't for the Lord. Galatians 6:4. Therefore, we have been buried with him through baptism into death, in order that Christ was raised from the dead through the glory of the Father, so that we too might walk in newness of life. For if we have become united with him in the likeness of his death, certainly we shall be also in the likeness of his resurrection. Something that popped for me here a while back when I was reading the account of Joshua the high priest. The righteous robes he placed on him was Christ's robes. That was the robes. It wasn't a new set of clean robes. It was the righteousness of Christ. And we've heard it so many times, and it's sad when you've heard it clearly so many times, it don't really latch on to it sometimes. But, I'm pretty sure it was Pastor that made the point that when the Father looks at us, he's not looking at a sinful, pardoned little criminal. He's looking at Jesus. That's what he's looking at. We are the embodiment of Christ because that's the mystery of Christ, the mystery of the ages, how he can bestow that upon us. That's how in that account with Joshua, he said, is this not my firebrand? You hush. And he told him, you place Christ's righteousness on him. Let's wrap down to the end of that. Verse 12, in closing. Therefore, do not let sin reign in our mortal body, that you should obey its lust. And do not go on presenting your members of your body to sin as instruments of unrighteousness, but present yourselves to God as those alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness to God. Satan, Lucifer, before he fell, had the very seal of God. He was the pattern, set as a pattern of what was right. And he let the most heinous sin creep in that he was deserving of something greater. He was so absorbed with himself, looking at all the richness that God placed upon him and saying, well, I deserve to be in charge. I'm going to take over. And from that sin, that lie, and that rebellion, and that selfishness, we have every other evil work present. I'm not going to covet whatever Shane's got if I truly am selfless and put him first. I'm going to be glad he got such and such, whatever it is. I'm not going to be trying to say, well, is there a way I can get it, or something like it, or why did he get it, not me? That's the nature of flesh, and that's the nature, I'm ashamed to say that when I was in the flesh, that's the nature I portrayed. I didn't care about nobody else, not truly. I may have deceived myself, but I was like, oh, well, they're the favorite. Okay, I see how that goes. But now, I'm pleased to say that I can see the growth to the point that I cherish the fact that Shane's blessed, or David's blessed, or whoever else is blessed. And I know that I will be blessed at some point in whatever. And I praise him for that nature, because it's what fashions us into the likeness of Christ. So truly let us focus on making sure we deny ourselves, because if that steps in the way, then everything's going to get unraveled. We're going to be out of place. Praise God.